In 1640, Chinese peasants owed the government the same tax. Their copper coins bought half what they did 5 years earlier. The silver they needed cost twice as much. Nothing about the tax had changed. Everything about money had. Within 4 years, the Ming Dynasty, rulers of the world's largest economy for nearly 3 centuries, would collapse. The problem wasn't rebellion. It wasn't corruption. It wasn't incompetence. It was silver. 2 centuries later, the same metal would trap China again. This is the story of how a global commodity became a national prison. Welcome to the Wealth Timeline, where money, power, and history quietly shaped the world around us. Because what destroyed these dynasties wasn't warfare or famine. It was a monetary system that worked brilliantly until the rest of the world changed the rules. Picture China in the early 1600s. The Ming Dynasty controlled roughly 30% of global GDP. Its cities dwarfed European capitals. Its porcelain, silk, and tea were the most coveted goods on earth. And it had solved a problem that would haunt Europe for another 2 centuries. How to fund a vast empire without drowning in metal coins. The answer was silver. By 1600, China had transformed into the world's first silver-based economy. Taxes, salaries, trade, everything ran on it. Farmers calculated debts in it, merchants measured wealth by it. It was elegant, efficient, revolutionary. But China produced almost no silver domestically. Every ounce had to be imported, from Japan, from Spanish America, from merchants who sailed halfway around the world because Chinese demand made silver twice as valuable in Beijing as in Madrid. The system worked, as long as silver kept flowing in. The Ming didn't choose silver because they loved it. They chose it because paper money had betrayed them. In 1375, the dynasty issued the Great Ming Treasure Note, elegant mulberry bark currency backed by imperial authority alone. No gold reserves, no silver backing, just faith. To fund the legendary treasure fleets of Admiral Zheng, massive ships exploring Africa and Southeast Asia, the government printed more notes, and more, and more. By the 1420s, inflation had destroyed the currency. Each note had plummeted to around 1% of its original value. Merchants stopped accepting paper entirely. The Ming tried to revert to copper coins, but the supply of metal was not great enough to keep up with the huge demand from requiring all 120 million subjects to pay taxes. Silver became the default, not by design, but by necessity. It had one critical advantage. The government couldn't print it. And for decades, this worked. Japan supplied silver in the 1500s. Then Spanish galleons from the Americas flooded Asian markets with Mexican and Peruvian silver. The Ming economy boomed, but the foundation was an assumption that foreign silver would always be available. That assumption was about to be tested. Between 1570 and 1640, silver transformed China. The exchange rate of gold to silver in China was between 1:5.5 to 1:7, while at the same time in Spain, the rate was 1:12 to 1:14. Because silver was worth twice as much in China, it created a massive arbitrage opportunity. Anyone with silver did everything possible to get it to Beijing. This flood of silver monetized the entire economy. Markets expanded into rural areas. Long-distance trade flourished. Credit networks emerged. China was effectively on a silver standard, imported, global, and seemingly infinite. But here's what no one fully grasped. China wasn't just participating in global trade. It had become dependent on it. When silver flowed in, prices stabilized. Tax collection worked smoothly. The economy expanded. When silver flows slowed, even slightly, the entire system strained. Each year of prosperity made the empire more vulnerable. By the 1630s, silver was losing about 2/3 of its value relative to goods. This wasn't inflation in the modern sense. This was a commodity shock. Silver itself was changing in value globally, and the Ming had no control over it. The break came from Europe. In 1621, Spain faced its own fiscal crisis. King Philip IV began cracking down on illegal smuggling of silver from Mexico and Peru across the Pacific towards China in favor of shipping American-mined silver directly from Spain to Manila. Dutch and English privateers attacked Spanish treasure fleets. Silver shipments to Asia plummeted. In China, the effects rippled through the economy. In the 1630s, a string of 1,000 copper coins was worth an ounce of silver. By 1640, it was reduced to half an ounce. By 1643, only 1/3 of an ounce. For peasants, this was catastrophic. They earned money in copper coins from local trade, but they paid taxes in silver. As copper devalued against silver, their tax burden effectively tripled in 5 years. They owed the same amount of silver, but acquiring that silver now cost everything they had. The government couldn't adjust. The tax system was rigid, calculated in silver. Local officials had no authority to accept payment in anything else. Famines struck northern China, partly from climate shifts during the Little Ice Age, partly because farmers couldn't afford to plant. Rebellions erupted, not from ideology, from desperation. Nothing had collapsed. The system still functioned, and that was the problem. It kept demanding silver that no longer existed in sufficient quantities. In 1644, rebel leader Li Zicheng marched into Beijing. The Chongzhen emperor, last ruler of the Ming, hanged himself in the imperial gardens. The dynasty fell, but not to superior military force, not to foreign invasion. It fell because the state could no longer function. The central government did little to relieve the populations during famines, leading to widespread discontent among the people. Why? Because the treasury was empty. Because tax collection had collapsed. Because the entire monetary system had broken down. Historians debate whether silver scarcity alone caused the fall. But conventional wisdom postulates that 17th century China became so dependent on foreign silver to sustain domestic economic growth that a sharp fall in silver imports in the 1640s led to the fall of the Ming Dynasty in 1644. The Manchu Qing Dynasty, which conquered China in the aftermath, learned a lesson: never trust paper money again. For nearly 2 centuries, they avoided it entirely, but they didn't abandon silver. The Qing inherited the Ming's silver dependency. For a century, this worked. Silver flowed from new sources. The economy stabilized. Then came opium. By the 1820s, British merchants faced a problem. China produced everything the West wanted: tea, silk, porcelain. But China wanted almost nothing from the West. The emperor remarked to King George III that the Qing Dynasty possessed all things and had no use for your country's manufactures. Britain bled silver to pay for Chinese goods. The solution was opium, grown in British-controlled India. By the 1830s, the Chinese opium trade soared to 30,000 chests, leading to silver drainage within the Chinese economy. The silver that had flowed into China for 2 centuries reversed direction. Now it flooded out to pay for an addictive drug that Britain smuggled in. Silver outflows were estimated at 4 to 10 million taels annually by the mid-1840s, exacerbating monetary contraction, rural deflation, and agricultural distress. The same mechanism that destroyed the Ming, sudden shifts in silver availability, now threatened the Qing. When China tried to stop the opium trade by force in 1839, Britain went to war. China lost, twice. The Treaty of Nanjing forced China to legalize opium, open treaty ports, and pay massive indemnities in silver. The monetary trap was complete. Who benefited? British merchants. The global financial system centered on London. Who paid? Chinese peasants, whose copper coins lost value. The Qing government, which hemorrhaged silver and legitimacy. By 1912, the dynasty collapsed, undermined by rebellions, foreign encroachment, and chronic fiscal crisis, all rooted in a currency system that worked brilliantly until it didn't. China's silver trap reveals something uncomfortable. When a nation pegs its monetary system to something it cannot control, whether silver, gold, or foreign currencies, it becomes vulnerable to external shocks. This isn't ancient history. In 1997, Asian economies dependent on dollar-pegged currencies faced the same dynamic. When global capital flows reversed, the systems broke. In 2008, Iceland's banks collapsed because they'd borrowed in foreign currencies they couldn't control. The mechanism changes. The vulnerability remains. The Ming made silver essential. The Qing inherited that dependency. Both paid the price when global conditions shifted. Today we call it systemic risk. In the 1600s they called it fate, but the lesson is identical. What you cannot print, you cannot control, and what you cannot control can destroy you. 2 dynasties, same trap. Systems fail not because they're poorly designed, they fail because they depend on conditions that do not last. The Ming built an economy on imported silver during a silver boom. When the boom ended, the economy couldn't adapt. The Qing inherited that dependence. When Britain reversed the flow, the dynasty's fate was sealed. The real danger wasn't silver itself. It was the illusion of stability. If you enjoyed uncovering this hidden chapter of history, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the Wealth Timeline, and turn on the bell icon, because the next story might just change how you see power itself.